I knew something was wrong the moment. The man at the edge of my fire wouldn't look at me, only past me, into the trees. Like he was afraid to let whatever stood there know he'd been seen. I had chosen the campground, precisely because it was empty. No reservation tags clipped to posts. No glow of other fires breathing between trunks. No distant laughter or radios bleeding through the dark. Just a gravel loop carved into a bowl of pine and fir. The kind of place people skipped because it sat too far from the highway and offered nothing Instagram-worthy. That was the point. I wanted quiet so complete. It felt like pressure against my ears. My tent was pitched just beyond the fire ring, close enough that the heat brushed my shins when I sat, far enough that sparks wouldn't kiss the nylon. The air smelled like sap and cold earth. My coffee mug steamed faintly, bitter and comforting. And somewhere deep in the woods, something small moved. Leaves whispering, a branch flexing and settling. Normal sounds. Harmless sounds. I told myself that deliberately, the way you do when you're alone and dusk is tipping toward night. The fire was the only color that mattered. Orange and gold, licked up from split logs, throwing a wavering boundary around me. Beyond it, the forest collapsed into layers of blue-black, trunks stacking into each other until depth stopped making sense. I kept my headlamp off. I wanted my eyes adjusted to the dark. I wanted to feel competent out here. That was when I saw him. He didn't step into the light so much as appear at its edge, a shape resolving itself from shadow. A man, thin, backpack slung low, standing too still. The first thing I noticed was his silence. No crunch of gravel, no cough, no polite clearing of the throat. Just there. I straightened, hand reflexively curling around the handle of my mug. "Hey," I said, pitching my voice calm. "Can I help you?" He flinched like I'd snapped something close to his ear. He took a half step back, then forward again, rocking on his heels. The firelight caught his face in fragments. Stubble, chapped lips, eyes sunk into shadow under the brim of a filthy cap. "Sorry," he said quickly. His voice was soft, almost breathless. Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you." "You didn't." I lied because that's what you do. "You okay?" He nodded too fast. Yeah, His gaze slid past my shoulder, into the trees behind me. Not a glance. A fixation. His pupils were blown wide, swallowing what little color they might have had. "I thought I saw someone, thought this site was empty." "It is," I said. "At least it was when I got here," he swallowed. His Adam's apple bobbed like it wanted to escape his throat. Right. He forced a smile that didn't quite stick. I'll go. Sorry again." He didn't wait for me to respond. He turned and melted back into the dark footsteps, finally announcing themselves as a soft retreat through needles and dirt. I sat there for a long moment, listening to the forest resettle around his absence. People wander through campsites all the time. Lost hikers, curious passers-by. It didn't mean anything. I told myself that while I fed another log into the fire and watched the sparks spin up and vanish. I told myself that while the darkness pressed closer, thick and patient. I told myself that while a faint unease slid under my ribs and refused to move. Hours passed. The fire burned down to coals. I heated soup and ate it straight from the can, the metal warming my palms. Night deepened. The stars sharpened overhead, cold and distant. The forest noises thinned, stretched out, like the world was holding its breath between movements. I was rinsing my spoon when I heard running. It came from the tree line, hard and uneven. Someone not caring where their feet landed. I stood, heart spiking, headlamp snapping on and cutting a white cone through the dark. He burst into the light like he'd been thrown. The man Elias Vance. I would learn his name later, though in that moment he was just a bundle of fear and sweat, staggered to a stop at the fire ring. His cap was gone. His hair was slicked flat to his skull, oily and matted. His shirt clung to him, darkened with sweat or something else. I didn't want to identify. His eyes were wild, darting, and when they locked onto mine there was relief there, sharp and desperate. "She's here," he said. "What?" My pulse thudded in my ears. "Slow down. Who's here?" He bent forward, hands on his knees, gulping air. When he straightened, he did it carefully, like sudden movement might break something fragile. His gaze flicked behind me again, stayed there, his body angled away from that direction. Every instinct screaming retreat. "You," he said, You followed me. I don't know you. I said, you came by earlier. That's it. His mouth twisted. You don't have to lie. She hates lies. A cold ribbon slid down my spine. Who hates lies? He laughed, a short, ugly sound. See, you do know. I took a step back, keeping the fire between us. Listen, you're not making sense. If you need help, I can call. No, the word ripped out of him. He clapped a hand over his mouth like he'd said too much. His eyes flicked again. Behind me, pleading now. Don't do that, she'll hear. The woods behind me were still. My headlamp washed over trunks and low brush, catching nothing but bark and shadow. The subtle night sounds had gone thin again, like someone had turned the volume down a notch. There's no one there, I said, more sharply than I meant to. You're scaring me. I know, he whispered. I know. That's why she picked you. Picked me for what? His gaze snapped back to my face, searching. You really don't know. Number, he studied me for a long, awful second. Sweat traced clean lines down his dirty cheeks. His hands shook. Then why did you follow me out here? I didn't, I said. I've been here all evening. She was with you earlier, he insisted. I saw her, standing right there. He gestured vaguely, not at the trees, but at the space behind my left shoulder, close enough that I felt the urge to twist away. I thought maybe you were together. My mouth was dry. There was no one with me. The fire popped, sending a spark skittering across the stones. Elias flinched hard enough to stumble. His eyes never left that empty space. You're still doing it, he said hoarsely. Doing what? Letting her stand behind you. I'm alone, I said, and for the first time, I wasn't sure I believed it. He took a step back, then another, boots crunching. His breathing sped up shallow and fast. She moves when you don't look. Did you know that? She hates being seen directly. Makes her itchy. A faint sound brushed my ears then. Not quite a rustle. Not quite a breath. The ambient noise of the forest warped, stretched. Like someone had pressed a thumb to a record. I told myself it was wind sliding through the canopy. I told myself a lot of things very quickly. Stop, I said. Just stop. He shook his head, hair plastered to his forehead. I tried. God, I tried. I kept my eyes on her. I didn't blink for. He swallowed hard. Doesn't matter. She likes you better. Why? He laughed again, hysteria cracking through. Because you don't turn around. My shoulders burned with the effort of staying still. Every muscle screamed at me to look, to confirm the emptiness I knew was there. The firelight flickered, throwing my shadow long and warped across the ground, a second self reaching into the dark. You're sick, I said, hating how small my voice sounded. You need help. So do you, he said gently. That's the worst part. You don't even know yet. He backed away another step. The boundary of the firelight crept up his legs, his torso, his face. His eyes were shining. Fever. Bright. He was crying, silent tears cutting tracks through grime. I can't do it again, he whispered. I can't watch. Watch what? His gaze flicked one last time behind me. He went very still. His face slackened, horror hollowing him out. Then why? He asked, voice breaking. Are you with her? Something exhaled. It was so close it raised the hairs along my neck. Not loud, not even distinct. Just the intimate suggestion of breath, warm against skin that suddenly felt too exposed. Elias screamed. He turned and ran, plunging into the forest without looking back. Branches cracked, footsteps tore away, then faltered, then disappeared entirely. Swallowed by distance and dark, I stood there, frozen, the fire snapping and hissing at my feet. My headlamp beam wavered as my hand shook. The woods behind me were empty. Of course they were. Empty and indifferent and vast. I broke. I killed the fire with frantic splashes from my water jug, embers dying in sullen clouds of steam. I yanked my tent stakes free, fabric collapsing into a tangle. I didn't pack carefully. I stuffed and shoved and tore, heart hammering so hard it made me dizzy. Every sound felt amplified. Zipper teeth rasping, plastic crinkling, my own breath rasping in my ears. I didn't turn around. I threw everything into the back of my car, slammed the hatch, and climbed into the driver's seat. My hands slipped on the wheel. The headlights washed over the campsite, over the fire ring now dark and cold. over the trees standing shoulder to shoulder, like a crowd that refused to disperse. As I pulled away, tires spitting gravel, I felt it then, pressure, like someone leaning close to whisper a secret. I kept my eyes on the narrow road, on the slice of safety ahead, and I drove until the forest thinned and the dark loosened its grip. I didn't stop shaking until dawn. I told myself later that Elias Vance was unwell, that isolation and exhaustion had cracked something in him, and I'd been unlucky enough to wander into the fallout. I told myself that the sound I'd heard was wind, the breath, a trick of nerves. I told myself I'd been alone, but sometimes, in quiet rooms, when I catch my reflection in a darkened window and feel that familiar prickle along my neck, I remember the way his eyes never left that empty space. I remember the certainty in his voice, and I wonder what he saw standing behind me. I wonder why it still feels like it never left. The first time he screamed at me, the coffee pot was still gurgling, and I remember thinking, absurdly, that the sound didn't belong inside a place this bright. Graveyard shifts teach you the shape of silence, not the quiet kind you get in a bedroom at night, but the kind that hums, fluorescent lights buzzing, refrigerators breathing, the distant sigh of trucks rolling past on the highway. The station sat off Route 17, like a forgotten tooth, all glass and white tile, glowing too hard against the dark fields. From the outside, it looked safe, clean, predictable. Inside, it was just me, the register, and the night. I worked the counter and the grill, poured burnt coffee into chipped mugs, wiped down the same stretch of laminate until my reflection warped back at me. Most nights blurred together. Same faces, same routines. Truckers with red eyes and nicotine breath. College kids daring each other to stay awake. Men who never quite looked at me, and men who looked too much. And then there was Art Mosley. He came in every night at exactly 1:12 a.m. I noticed because the bell over the door always rang the same way. 2 sharp chimes, and then a soft rattle, like it was embarrassed to be heard. He'd push through with his shoulder, blonde hair slicked back and shiny under the lights, and head straight for the stool by the window. Never the counter, never the booth. The stool by the window, where the glass looked out onto nothing but dark highway and a low ditch full of weeds. Coffee, he'd say. Not a question. I'd pour it black. He never thanked me, never complained either. He'd sit there, hands folded around the mug, staring out the window as if something was going to step out of the dark and wave back at him. At first, I thought he was waiting for someone. Then I thought he might be lonely. Then I stopped thinking about it at all. Routine has a way of dulling curiosity. Art was normal, too normal maybe. Clean denim jacket, work boots scrubbed to a dull brown. His face was pale, soft around the jaw, with a mouth that always looked like it was holding back a comment. His eyes were light blue or gray, depending on the night, but I rarely caught them straight on. He didn't look at people. He looked past them. Once, during a storm, the power flickered and the lights dimmed for half a second. I felt it before I saw it, the sudden pressure of being watched. I looked up, and for the first time, Art wasn't staring out the window. He was looking at me, not leering, not smiling, just looking like he was trying to memorize my face before it disappeared. When the lights steadied, he turned back to the glass. My skin prickled for a long time after that. Still, if you'd asked me then, I'd have said he was harmless. Everyone needs a place to sit and stare sometimes. Then he stopped coming. One night passed. Then another, a week. I caught myself glancing at the door at 1:12 a.m., waiting for the bell. It didn't ring. His stool stayed empty, reflecting the ceiling lights like a blind eye. "Your boyfriend stands you up," one of the truckers joked when he noticed me looking. "He's just a regular," I said, sharper than I meant to. 2 weeks went by. 3. His absence became its own kind of presence. The window felt wrong without him there, like something had been moved and not put back. I told myself it was nothing. People disappear from routines all the time. New routes, new jobs, new lives. But sometimes when I wiped down the counter late at night, I caught the faintest smell near his stool. Not coffee, not grease. Something damp animal. I blamed the mop water, the drains, my imagination, stretching in the dark. The night he came back, the bell rang wrong. It was a single, heavy clang, like the door had been hit instead of opened. I was behind the counter, counting change, when the smell reached me. Stronger this time, wet earth, old sweat. A sourness that made the back of my tongue curl. I looked up. For a moment, I didn't recognize him. The man in the doorway was bent forward, shoulders hunched, as if he was carrying weight no one else could see. His hair hung in ropes around his face, blonde gone dark with grease and dirt. His jacket was gone, replaced by a shredded hoodie that clung to him like it had been slept in, sweated in, fought in. His jeans were torn at the knees, stained black and brown. His boots were caked with mud. He stood there, breathing hard, eyes fixed on the floor. "Art?" I said before I could stop myself. His head snapped up. Under the lights, his face looked wrong, thinner, sharper. His cheeks were hollow, skin stretched tight as if something inside him had shrunk. There were scratches along his neck, half-healed, and his lips were cracked, bleeding at the corners. His eyes caught the light. They shone, not the dull reflection you get from tired eyes, but a sharp, bright glint, like a cat caught in headlights. I blinked, convinced it was a trick of the fluorescence. He flinched back, one hand flying up to shield his face. "Don't," he rasped. His voice scraped, like it hadn't been used in a while. "Don't look at me." The words hit the room and fell flat. The refrigerators hummed on. The coffee pot bubbled. The world didn't end. "I'm sorry," I said automatically. Are you okay?" He laughed. It was a short, broken sound that turned into a cough. He staggered past the counter, not toward his usual stool, but toward the back hall. The bathroom door slammed so hard it rattled the framed cigarette price list. The lock clicked. Then there was nothing but the sound of his breathing. It came through the door in wet, panicked bursts, like someone trying to suck air through mud. I stood frozen, hands gripping the edge of the counter, listening. Every breath ended in a whine, a high animal sound that made my scalp crawl. "Art?" I called. My voice sounded too loud, too thin. No answer, just breathing. Faster now. I told myself he was drunk. On something. People came through here like that all the time. I'd seen men cry in booths at 3 a.m, seen women sleep in bathrooms with their heads on the sink. This wasn't my business. I wasn't trained for this. Still, my feet carried me toward the hall. The bathroom light was off, complete darkness behind the door. The crack beneath it glowed faintly from the hall lights. And I saw something shift there, a shadow moving back and forth. "Hey," I said softly. "If you need help, I can call someone." The breathing stopped. For a second, the silence was so complete it felt like pressure on my ears. Then, from inside the dark, I heard him whisper, "Please." The word was stretched thin, barely there. "Please don't look at me." I reached for the door before my brain caught up. My fingers wrapped around the handle. It was warm. I hesitated. Every instinct I had screamed at me to step back, to call the cops, to lock myself behind the counter and wait for dawn. But there was something in his voice, fear so raw it felt contagious. I pushed the door open. The darkness swallowed the light. For a moment, I couldn't see anything. The air inside was thick, heavy with that damp animal smell. My eyes adjusted slowly, outlines forming, sink. Mirror, the stall door, half open. Then I saw him. He was crouched in the corner, pressed against the tile, knees pulled to his chest. His hands were clamped over his face, fingers digging into his own skin. Through the gaps, his eyes burned. They reflected the hall light like coins at the bottom of a well. He looked up and he screamed, "Don't look at me." The sound tore through me. It wasn't just loud. It was wrong, pitched too high and too low at the same time, vibrating in my teeth. The air seemed to warp around it, the edges of the room blurring, as if my eyes couldn't agree on what they were seeing. He launched himself at me. I remember falling back, my shoulder hitting the doorframe. His weight slammed into me, knocking the breath from my lungs. His hands clawed at my face, fingers scraping my cheeks, my forehead, my eyes. "Don't look," he howled, over and over. "Don't look, don't look, don't look." I squeezed my eyes shut, hands flying up to shield my face. The world became noise and pain, and the sickening thud of my head hitting the tile. His breath was hot against my skin, sour and metallic. I felt his nails dig into my scalp, tugging at my hair. Something wet splashed my cheek, blood, his or mine. I didn't know. I screamed, or tried to. The sound came out strangled. Then, just as suddenly, he was gone. The pressure lifted. His weight vanished. I heard his footsteps pounding down the hall, the bell over the door screaming as he burst out into the night. I lay there for a long time, eyes still shut, heart hammering so hard I thought it might tear loose. When I finally opened them, the bathroom was empty. The darkness seemed deeper without him, like it was holding its breath. I locked the doors, called the police with shaking hands, gave my statement through a mouth that wouldn't quite form words. They found nothing. No sign of him outside. No fingerprints they could use. No record of a man named Arthur Mosley in the system. The officer who took my statement kept glancing at my scratched face, his eyes lingering on the marks near my eyes. "Are you sure you didn't know him?" he asked. "I knew him," I said. "He came in every night." The officer nodded slowly, like he didn't believe me. I didn't sleep for days. When I did, I dreamed of eyes in the dark shining back at me. I woke up with my hands over my face, whispering, "I'm not looking." A week later, the news ran a short piece. Local woman found dead in her home. Husband missing, suspected homicide. The photo they showed was old, clean. A man with slicked back blonde hair and pale eyes that didn't quite meet the camera. Arthur Mosley. They said he'd fled into the woods behind their house. That search teams found signs of someone living rough scraps of clothing, half-eaten animals, muddy footprints that didn't quite look right. They never found him. Sometimes, on my drive home, as dawn starts to thin the dark, I catch a reflection in my rearview mirror. Just for a second, a pair of eyes, bright and watchful, staring back at me from the back seat. I don't look for long. I've learned better than that. The first time I noticed the change in his eyes, the coffee pot was still gurgling, and I remember thinking, absurdly, that human eyes were not supposed to do that. Night shifts teach you how to catalog small things, not because they matter, but because there's nothing else to hold on to. The station sat alone off Route 17, a glass box flooded with fluorescent light, floating in a dark stretch of fields and asphalt. The lights buzzed constantly, a thin electric whine that never quite faded into the background. Refrigerators hummed. Ice rattled in its bin when the air compressor kicked on. Outside, trucks passed like distant weather. Inside, it was usually just me. I learned the rhythms of the place so well that time became predictable. 12:47 p.m., a fuel delivery truck. 1:03 a.m., the older couple in the RV, and at exactly 1:12 a.m., the bell over the door would ring, two sharp chimes and a loose rattle, like it was reluctant to announce itself. That was Arthur. Art Mosley. He never varied. He came in alone, jacket zipped to his throat, blonde hair combed flat and glossy under the lights. He went straight to the same stool by the window, the one that looked out onto nothing but a drainage ditch and a strip of black highway. He never glanced at the counter displays, never looked at me unless he had to. "Coffee," he'd say. Not rude, not friendly, just factual. I poured it black. He wrapped both hands around the mug and stared out the glass as if the dark owed him something. At first, I assumed grief, or boredom, or the simple habit of a man who didn't like being home. But after weeks of watching him, I realized something else. He wasn't looking through the window. He was looking into it, his gaze fixed at eye level, tracking movement I couldn't see. When headlights passed, he didn't flinch. When lightning flashed during storms, he didn't blink. He sat perfectly still, shoulders squared, posture tight, like an animal waiting at the edge of cover. Once, when the lights flickered during a power hiccup, I felt it before I understood it, the sudden awareness of being observed. I looked up. Art had turned around. Our eyes met for less than a second. His expression didn't change, but something in his posture did. His shoulders drew back slightly, chin lifting. The lights steadied, and he turned away again. The skin on the back of my neck went tight, like it was trying to pull itself away from the rest of me. I told myself it was nothing. Then he stopped coming. One night passed, then another. The bell stayed silent at 1:12 a.m. His stool sat empty. The vinyl cracked in the shape of his weight. I caught myself glancing toward the door without meaning to, waiting for a routine that no longer existed. 2 weeks went by. 3. The absence felt wrong. Not dramatic, just misaligned, like a painting hung slightly crooked. I wiped down the counter near his seat and noticed a smell that hadn't been there before. Not strong, just persistent, damp, like wet fur left too long in a closed room. I blamed the mop bucket, the drains, the fact that night stretched your imagination thin. The night he came back, the bell rang wrong. One heavy clang, metal on metal, like the door had been shoved open with a shoulder instead of a hand. The smell hit first. It rolled in low and thick, clinging to the air. Wet dog, yes, but under that, something sharper. The copper tang you get near raw meat. The kind of smell that settles in the back of your throat and refuses to leave. I looked up. The man standing in the doorway was bent forward, arms hanging too loose at his sides. His hair was no longer slicked back. It hung in dark ropes clotted with grease and dirt. His jacket was gone. His clothes looked slept in, fought in, fabric torn at the seams, knees ground thin and blackened. Mud caked his boots. He stood there breathing through his mouth, fast and shallow, eyes locked on the floor. "Art," I said before I could stop myself. His head snapped up. The lights caught his face, and my first thought was that he looked hollowed, like something essential had been scraped out of him. His cheeks had sunk inward. There were half-healed scratches along his neck and jaw, pale lines against skin, gone grayish and tight. Then I saw his eyes. The light didn't just reflect off them. It returned, not a flat shine, but a precise bounce back, green gold sharp as a mirror. Retroreflection, the kind you see in deer on the roadside, caused by the tapetum lucidum, a layer of tissue behind the retina that amplifies low light. Humans do not have that tissue. Seeing it on a man's face made my stomach turn over. He flinched hard, one arm jerking up to shield his eyes. "Don't," he said hoarsely. "Don't look at me." His voice sounded unused, like it had been dragged out of his throat by force. Are you okay?" I asked. That was a mistake. His lips pulled back, not into a smile, but into something strained, showing teeth too quickly. A short, broken laugh escaped him, then dissolved into coughing. He lurched past the counter, not toward his usual seat, but straight down the hall. The bathroom door slammed, the lock clicked. Then came the breathing. It came through the door in harsh bursts, wet and irregular, like someone running on all fours. Each inhale ended with a high, thin whine that made my shoulders tense without my permission. I stood there, hands flat on the counter, listening. "Art," I called. The breathing stopped. The silence that followed felt deliberate. Then, very softly, from the darkness behind the door, "Please," the word trembled. Not weakness. Control stretched thin. "Please don't look at me." I should have stepped back, called for help, locked myself in the office and waited for morning. But something in his tone snagged me. A warning dressed up as a plea. I walked down the hall. The bathroom light was off. The space beyond the door was black, absolute. The crack underneath glowed faintly from the hall, and I saw movement there, back and forth, back and forth. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice low. "I can call someone if you need help." No answer. I reached for the handle. The metal was warm. I hesitated just long enough for my instincts to scream at me. Then, I opened the door. The darkness swallowed the light. It took a moment for my eyes to adjust. I smelled him more clearly then. Wet fur, dirt, and underneath it the unmistakable iron scent of dried blood. He was crouched in the corner, pressed tight against the tile. Knees pulled up. His hands were clamped over his face, fingers digging into his own skin. I could hear his breathing again, faster now. "Art," I whispered. He lowered his hands. Our eyes locked. That was the trigger. The moment my gaze met his entire body changed. His shoulders dropped. His spine straightened. The hesitation vanished, replaced by something sharp and purposeful. "Don't look at me." The scream tore out of him, broken and layered, as if two sounds were trying to occupy the same space. It wasn't just loud. It vibrated, distorting the hum of the lights, overwhelming everything else. He launched forward. I didn't feel the impact at first. I just heard the wet smack of my head hitting tile and tasted copper. My vision burst white. then went dark at the edges. His weight crushed the air from my lungs. Hands raked at my face, nails scraping skin, catching in my hair. "Don't look," he howled over and over. "Don't look. Don't look." I squeezed my eyes shut and brought my arms up, shielding my face. His breath washed over me, hot and rank. Something warm dripped onto my cheek, blood, his or mine, I couldn't tell. I heard myself screaming. Then, as suddenly as it started, the pressure lifted. Footsteps pounded away. The bell over the door shrieked as he burst back into the night. I stayed on the floor, eyes closed, chest heaving, until the silence settled again. When I finally opened them, the bathroom was empty. The darkness felt deeper without him, as if it had been disturbed and hadn't yet resettled. The police came. They listened. They took photos of the scratches along my face, the red marks on my neck. They searched the area. They found nothing. No record of Arthur Mosley. No sign of him outside. One officer asked me gently if I was sure the man hadn't been an animal. I quit the night shift a month later. I work days now, in a busy office with big windows and too many people. The lights are softer. The sounds are constant and human. I should feel safe, but sometimes, when the office empties and the sun hits my computer screen just right, I catch my reflection staring back at me. I lean in close. I take my phone out and turn on the flashlight. I shine it into my own pupils, checking, making sure the light doesn't bounce back.